Good morning. Thank you for worshiping with us. If you have your Bibles, we'll be in the book of Nehemiah this morning, if you'll turn there with me. If this is your first time with us or first time in a while, we're just grateful that you're here. Thank you for being our honored guest today. We are a church plant, which means that we're new and we're growing, but we've got a lot of exciting things just around the corner, and we're just grateful that you chose to be with us today. We always say if you gather with Hope Church, we want you to experience two things. That is a genuine encounter with God, and secondly, the kindest people you've met in all of Greensboro. So I hope that you experienced that this morning, and I'm grateful for you. We're doing something a little bit different today. The title of this sermon or talk or conversation that we're going to have today is called The Wall We're Building. You know, we've been going through the book of Nehemiah and taking one passage at a time, one section at a time, and working through what it means. And the story in Nehemiah is so powerful, and it's so beneficial to us, not only as Christians and believers and those who are following Christ, but as a church, where we're at as a church family and as a church body in this phase where we're working to grow and get ready to launch as a church plant and do a big launch event to welcome our community in as soon as our downstairs renovation is complete. And to be honest with you, I came into this week with a completely different sermon from Nehemiah. But I really, toward the beginning of the week, started to feel something, and I've learned to call that a holy discontent. And what I mean by that is that I felt an unrest that I believed was prompted by God in my heart. And I think, to be honest with you, what it's mostly connected to is that we are entering the last 4 or 5 months before our launch day, which is going to be in September. And there's a lot we've got to do. And we've been on this launch journey for quite some time, and it made me think about what we've been talking about in Nehemiah for the last several months. The truth is, as we've gone through Nehemiah, there's been so many good principles and so many truths that we needed to hear, but I wanted to take today just to zoom out a little bit, right? Get a little above the next 5 or 10 verses in the passage and just recap for a bit today and talk about what it means for us, because the 30,000-foot view, there's some things to learn from that vantage point. I want to start today with a question that you may have thought about. It might have been on your mind. If it hasn't, you'll think about it today. The question is, why does Hope Church exist? And you could think about, when I ask that question, the mission of the big church, right? Not just Hope Church, but all churches. Why is it that we exist? Well, we exist to further the mission of Jesus. We exist to bring people into restored relationship with God, to teach them how to follow Jesus, to teach them to live as a family, as a church family, and care for one another, and bring a little bit of the sweetness and the kingdom of heaven here to earth by the way that we love one another and look like Jesus and passionately follow Jesus together. I heard J.D. Greear say that the church is either focused on its mission or it's just a club for disobedient Christians. That's pretty heavy, but it's true. We don't just get together to figure out how to benefit ourselves more. We don't just do it for selfish reasons. There's a mission, and there are people who need Christ. There are people who are lost. There are people who are struggling, not just struggling with paying bills, although that's a real thing, struggling to find meaning. What is their life about? Like, was I just made to chase money and a nicer vacation next year and work myself to death getting that? Or is there something bigger? What is my life about? Why am I here? And the church exists because people exist, and God cares about people. So that brings our mission out of the big version, out of the what is the big church, what does all churches exist for, to, well, then what's our place in that? You know, if I could put it this way, there is the big spiritual sense that all churches exist for, but then there's us. Why does Hope Church exist in Greensboro? What are we trying to do? We talk a lot about being a church plant, right? That means different things to different people, but the fact is what it means for us is it means that we've been doing a lot of preparation for a big moment to then go, if you could call it this, go nuts. And we're going to invite everybody in our community, and we're going to, once, our kids' space, we've been a little limited on that, and that's going to change in the next couple months. But what does it mean that we're a church plant? The reason we're here, we often say things in church world like this. We're here to reach people with the gospel. We're here to be the body of Christ. We're here to follow Jesus. And all of that is true. But those things apply to every Bible-teaching church, don't they? So why are we here? Why is Hope Church specifically here? I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about Nehemiah. I was thinking about how his mission. I was thinking about our mission. I was thinking about those comparisons. And to be honest with you, I put so much in my notes, and I don't know how much I'm going to use them. I'm going to try to use them. But I'm going to try more just to share with you what's on my heart. And so if it's a little less structured today than normal, I hope you'll forgive me for that, and we can get somewhere anyway. But I was thinking about that. Why did Nehemiah go all the way 900 miles on a horse, by the way, 4 months travel, to leave the palace of Persia, where he had this great position as an advisor to the king, one of the most important people in all of the empire, and had it made, really, relatively speaking. And he leaves all of that, and he goes to Jerusalem, which we know it was his hometown, but he had never seen it. He'd never been there. And he goes there its walls are broken down, it's burnt down, and he goes there to rebuild it. Really, without walls, a city back then wasn't even a city. It was a one-horse town. It was an outpost. And the answer to that question for us, what are we doing? What burns in our heart? The answer to that is what we've been building toward for over 3 years now, since we became Hope Church. And we're on the precipice of that vision, that mission, taking on new meaning. As God has prepared us as a church, as we've gone through things together, and in His timing, not ours, we're coming close to stepping into a huge opportunity that's in front of us to take on the work that we set out to do from the very beginning of us being here as Hope Church. And here's the why, if I could put it this way. The why is to plant a church that lives like a family, becomes like Jesus, makes disciples, and plants churches. That's what we want to do as Hope Church. We want to live as a family, become like Jesus, make disciples, and plant churches. I'm going to share something with you that the Hope Church pastors wrote recently. It's the vision of the Hope Church pastors, not only for our location, but for all of Hope Church, because something that you may know to some degree or other is that we're not just one church, we're part of a family of churches. There are 10 locations, 10 different expressions of Hope Church all over North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, and Georgia. And we work together on a lot of missional things. And what is it that we're wanting to accomplish? Well, this is, at the risk of being a little too big picture, I want you to hear this morning, because I want you to know you're a part of something that's for Greensboro, but not just for Greensboro. This is what they wrote. It says, Hope Church exists to build a multiplying movement of churches that makes disciples and plants churches across the East Coast and intentional places around the world. Hope Church will live in pursuit of becoming a family of 25 thriving, self-sustaining, and contributing locations, each led by pastors who are mission-focused, fully aligned with our integrated model. Churches that aren't just sustaining ministry, but multiplying it. Church locations that develop leaders, identify planters, and serve as engines that drive us to plant churches. Our heartbeat is to advance the mission of Jesus into unreached and underserved communities through theologically sound, biblically bold, passionately worshiping churches that offer a relaxed and welcoming environment. One of our identifying markers will be authenticity in every area of ministry. Hope Church is treating New England as a strategic mission field. If you don't know this, sidebar, New England is one of the most unchurched places, and it's actually the most unchurched region of the United States. Our vision is to establish 4 Hope Church-minded, Hope Church-like, multiplying churches that are committed to making disciples who are equipped, called, and then sent out to plant more churches in New England. Those churches will be established with the understanding that they aren't isolated works, but launching pads for a movement of gospel-centered churches in New England. Hope Church will also work toward a global partnership through Southeastern in Africa for the purpose of sending out and resourcing church planters in Africa who are theologically grounded and committed to planting healthy, gospel-centered churches in Africa. Just so you know, both of those things are in various stages, both of those big picture missions. We have connections already in Africa, and we have a team going over this year to begin the work of training leaders. There's already a group of Christians who we're working with there that there are members in Hope Church in another location who used to be missionaries in Africa, and they're kind of leading that effort. And Hope Church is looking to, in the future, send missions teams over there and to plant churches and so on. This will allow Hope Church and Hope Church pastors to utilize short-term missions trips to train and equip leaders and members to engage in the mission of Jesus around the world. This vision should be received with urgency, striving for our local health for the sake of the shared vision of multiplication. This includes building ministry structures that don't just support attendance, but drives growth and leadership development and multiplication. So you understand, our goal isn't just a collection of churches. It's a movement of churches that's mission-focused. We want to make a dent. We want to make a real impact around the world, and I'm excited about that. There's all kinds of neat things coming. That's just a snapshot. I want to tell you this too, and this is just me being transparent with you. Greensboro is a strategic and important part of Hope Church. You might look around here this morning and say, well, we're not as many people as most of the other locations, so how could that be true? We are in a uniquely highly populated area for Hope Church. We're the highest population center in all of Hope Church, which means that the potential of this location is unique. There's a lot of people throughout Greensboro who need Jesus, who would respond positively to the gospel, who, if their needs could be met and they knew they could belong to something, they would put their faith and trust in Jesus. There's also a lot of Christians in Greensboro who, for lack of a better way of saying it, have just gotten stagnant. They're not pushing forward in the charge. They've just drifted. I'm not being mean to them. I've drifted at times in my life. I know that all of you have too. But what we could represent to those people is a way to plug into the mission of Jesus and get their sights set on something so much greater than soccer practices and paying bills. Something that impacts the souls of men and women for eternity. And so Greensboro is very important to Hope Church. That's why we're here. And in the next roughly 18 weeks, I was looking at the calendar last night. I didn't just do that in my head. In the next 18 weeks, let's call it 125 days, we're going to be entering our launch phase. As a matter of fact, we're entering high-intensity pre-launch phase now. And it represents a little bit of a shift change for us as a church. Because while we've wanted to launch for a long time, we've spent 3 years just working on things and fixing things and renovating the building and trying to grow slowly through personal connections. But it's huge, isn't it? That's exciting. That we're coming up on in the next few months something this cool and this awesome. It might be a little scary, but it's going to be an adventure that's worth being on, I can tell you that. I believe God wants to do big things through Hope Church in this city. I believe that, and if I didn't believe that, I'll tell you this. Sometimes I look back and I think, man, what was it that made me pick up my family of 6 with 4 little babies? My youngest was 6 months old. And move out of the city that I'd lived in every day of my life, 600 miles away, to move to a city where I didn't know anyone. And sometimes I can't believe that was over 3 years ago. Can you? It's hard to imagine. But I did that then, and I believe in this now because I believe in the vision of what we're doing. I believe in what God's called us to. That vision caused me to sell out. 100%. I decided I'm going to put my yes on the table and ask God to do something amazing. So here's what I want to do. I want to talk a little bit about Nehemiah, the big shifts, and none of this will be new to you because we've talked about it. But I want to go through these big shifts in his story and talk about what it means for us. Because Nehemiah is a great leader, but he's also just a guy. How many of you see this thing online where people say you can just do things? Anybody ever seen those videos or those comments? They're like, you can just do things. What they mean is, we limit ourselves. Oh, I could never. Yes, you could. You know what everybody else does? They just do it. And you can just do it. We can do awesome things. It's easy to look at other people and say, oh, is that possible? Yes, it's possible. Nehemiah is not. He was not supernatural. He's just a man who was obedient to the call that God placed on his life. He's in chapter 1, Nehemiah 1. I'll read verse 3 and 48. Here's what he says. This is Nehemiah's friends talking to him about the condition of Jerusalem. He says, those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down and its gates have been burned with fire. And then Nehemiah says, when I heard these words, I sat down and wept. These are the words of Nehemiah's friend to him. Nehemiah is doing well. He doesn't need this. He's got a great job. He's got long-term security. He's comfortable. And his brothers come to him with news from Jerusalem. And the news is devastating. The walls are rubble. The gates are ash. The city is defenseless. It's disgraced. And Nehemiah, it doesn't say this verse on the screen, when I heard these words, I sat down and wept. I mourned for a number of days, fasting and praying before the God of the heavens. Nehemiah doesn't jump right into strategizing, does he? He doesn't jump right into problem solving. He sits down and he weeps. He's heartbroken. Why? Because he understands something that all of us need to understand. Sometimes a broken wall is not just a broken wall, is it? It's a sign that a story seems to have ended. It means that everyone believes that the best days are behind them. It means that there's not hope for the future. It's not just a physical problem, it's a spiritual problem. A city without walls can't protect its people. It can't be a home. It can't be what it was made to be. And Jerusalem isn't just any city, it's God's city, the place where his name dwells, and it's in ruins. Spiritual problems require spiritual solutions. Nehemiah, he wants to go solve the problem, but he doesn't start there. He starts by praying because he needs more than just a good strategy. He needs God's intervention. So let me ask you the question. Let me ask you, what has broken your heart about our community? When I moved here, I'll just tell you this. When I moved here, my heart was broken for several things. First of all, there was a church here that was struggling to see a future. They had a hard time seeing it. They had a hard time picturing it. There was a building that needed a lot of work to update it. A church that was struggling to reach new people. And so we began the journey at that time to plant Hope Church here in a building that this place has a long history. But it was quickly losing hope for the future. And that broke my heart. But the fact is, the heartbreak goes much bigger than just this property, doesn't it? Our community, our city has major needs. Sin and destruction has caused so much pain around us. Do you see that when you're out there sometimes? Do you see the people? Do you see hopeless people? Maybe even coworkers, maybe even family members, friends. Sin and destruction causes so much pain. Families and lives torn apart, people going around in just quiet desperation, wanting a meaning for it, longing for purpose. Our community, although you meet a lot of other Christians in the community, we are still majority unchurched. People who are religious but not followers of Jesus. They might know a little something about the Bible, but they've never been transformed by the power of God. They don't have hope. How does that affect us? What do we feel when we hear that? How does it affect? Does it break our hearts? We're surrounded by, truthfully, a very fast-growing city and a fast-growing community that does not know the love of God and needs to. We're surrounded more and more every day as this area grows by people who need a vibrant, gospel-centered church to reach them. And if it doesn't break our heart, we're in trouble because we're not the church. We're not who God's called us to be. Like I said, like the J.D. Greear quote at the beginning, we're just a club for disobedient Christians. But a church whose heart is broken, whose leadership aches, whose membership longs for something better, and we weep and we feel the weight of it, that church acts differently. That church can't stay still. That church has to do something about it. They feel like Nehemiah. It's no longer just about Sunday morning. It's about being a community of believers that's committed to seeing the world we live in changed for the glory of God. That's where we need to be, deeply broken over the state of our community and for the people in it, and fully sold out to changing it. What Nehemiah does next is he doesn't immediately broadcast the problem and start trying to ask for help. He first inspects it. He rides around the walls at night. You read chapter 2, verses 11 through 16. He looks at the rubble. He sees the burnt gates. He really gets a good analysis of what's gone wrong. He wants to see the actual state of that city, up close, personal. And why does that matter? Because when he stands up to address the people, he says, you see the trouble we're in. He's not speaking from theory. He's not guessing. He knows. He's seen it. And here at Hope Church, we've been kind of doing our inspection too. You know, when I moved here 3 years ago, I didn't know this community. I didn't know this city. But in 3 years, that's changed. We've kind of for the last couple of years, been doing some combination of inspecting and building. We've evaluated where we are, we've evaluated who we are, we've evaluated what's in front of us, and we've begun to prepare for the work of trying to build a church family and build a church culture that's worth bringing our community into. We have a building we've mostly upgraded. We've completed the top floor with very small little things still needed, but mostly done. And we're making huge progress on our downstairs, which is going to be our Hope Kids area. I'm really excited for our new Hope Kids floor downstairs. We have a vision, and we have a community to reach. And so we need to get like Nehemiah. We need to pray with broken hearts. We need to ask God to break our hearts for what breaks His, so that we will move forward with lockstep, full-throated dedication. And the truth is the opportunity in front of us is vital. We're at that point where moving forward with full steam is necessary. We're a church plant. We have limited financial resources. And we have really the next 12 months to make a difference, to grow as a church, to really make a huge difference and see our church become self-sustaining because we grow in that way. This next phase is launch. I don't say that to scare you. That's the reality of it. And I think it's important that we feel the weight of that. It's time to go all out and to give it all we've got for God's glory and to see people's lives changed. Listen to what comes next in chapter 2. Nehemiah calls to the people of Jerusalem. Here's what he says in Nehemiah 2:17 and 18. He says, "Then I said to them, you see the trouble we're in. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace. I also told them about the gracious hand of my God on me and what the king had said to me, and they replied, let us start rebuilding." Look at what Nehemiah does. He names the problem. He doesn't hide it. You know, the walls are broken. It's real. But then he doesn't stop there. He says, come, let's rebuild. He doesn't say, watch me, I'll rebuild this. He also doesn't say, hey, get to it and I'll be in my office if you need me. He says, come, let's do this together. The thing that God has always used throughout history has been a group of people willing to put aside personal preferences and make sacrifices and work together. I heard somebody recently say, he said, don't ever underestimate what God can do with a small group of people who are completely sold out to obeying Him to change the world. That's the only thing that ever has. It's the only thing that has ever changed the world is when a group of people, not a big group, starts small, decides, we're going to obey God. We're going to follow this vision. And notice this, he really doesn't point them mainly to his own genius. He doesn't say, look at me and look what I've done. I'm a big shot. I'm from the palace. Listen to me. No, what he says is, I also told them about the gracious hand of my God on me. In other words, he's saying, God's hand is on this. I've seen it firsthand. God has already been blessing. Now let's do this. Let's get our hands dirty. It's time to work. Let's be honest. We've seen God's hand on us too. I think about all the things that's happened since we came to Plant Hope Church. My first Sunday here in 2023, there was 19 people here, plus my family. And now there's more than double that. That's part of our church. God has been growing our church, putting together a core group to plant a church with. And since then, we've seen improvement in every single area of our church. Our giving has gone up. I mentioned the renovations that have been happening. We've launched multiple thriving small groups that are growing and connecting and growing deeper and loving one another. We've taken kids to student camp. We've taken couples to marriage retreats. We've baptized 10 people. We've served our community. We've had multiple outreaches that have done an amazing job of showing people the love of God. Can I tell you this? The fundraising alone has been amazing. You know, we've raised over $100,000 in the last 3 years in outside giving to help us plant this church. That's incredible. It's incredible. Matter of fact, God just allowed me just this month, just within the last month, to raise $4,500 just for our launch day. Awesome stuff. I feel a lot like Nehemiah when he says, the gracious hand of my God has been upon me. I feel the same way. God's hand has been on us. He's been blessing us already. And the people of Jerusalem respond with action. Not let's think about it, not I'll pray and see what happens. No, they say, let's start rebuilding. Like today, let's go. What needs to be done? And that's where we are. Church, that's where we are. It's go time. Like I said, 120 days or so between now and a launch day. The truth is, I thought we'd be at go time a long time before now, if I'm being honest with you. But I'm, by nature, an impatient person. God doesn't do things on our timetable, does he? But here we are. We're finally here. The time has actually come to engage our city, to engage our community in a new way. We've been a core group up to this point, but it's time to start thinking like a launch team. So before I tell you what that looks like, I want to talk vision for a little bit, because I want to take us a little bit deeper, because if we're not careful, we'll start to think about this primarily in terms of survival. Churches do that all the time. You'd be shocked at the high percentage of churches right here in Greensboro who think primarily about survival and not about legacy. They live for, how long can we string this out? How long can we keep this going? What do we need to do to survive? I don't want us to think about our church life that way. I want us to think about it in terms of legacy. I want you to think about what's going to remain here after all of us are gone. None of us are here forever. You know, every pastor is an interim pastor because it's Jesus' church. All of the New Testament books that are written to the church at Ephesus and the church at Colossae and the church at Corinth and the church, when you read all of those books, all the churches in the New Testament that got a book deal, they're all gone. Not one of them is still around. It's all a pile of rocks. But Jesus' church, which is actually not buildings and church names, it's people. His church has always continued to grow and press forward. We're nothing more than stewards. But I want to ask you, what is it that you want to remain when you leave here? When you're done, Scripture says life is just a vapor. It's a puff of smoke. You're here and then you're gone. Church, life is too short. I don't just want to sit around and waste time. I don't want to play it safe. I want to risk the biscuit. You know, people talk about stewardship, and stewardship is so important, but most of the time when you hear the word stewardship, you hear people talking about making sure you're saving and making sure you're being careful, right? You ever hear people talk about stewardship and that's what they're talking about? Oh, make sure you're saving, make sure you're being careful, make sure you're playing it safe. You know, in the Bible, that's not the way stewardship's talked about. When Jesus looks at the servants that he entrusts with the talents, he gives the one 10, and what does he do? He invests it and makes 10 more. He gives the other one 5, and what does he do with the 5? He makes 5 more. The other story, it's 5 and 2, but it's the same principle. They double it. Who's the unwise? Who's the unfaithful steward? The one who buries it. The one who says, I'm going to make sure I don't lose anything, and I'm just going to bury what's been given to me. He calls him a wicked servant. He said, you should have done something with what I gave you. Church, our life, what's more precious to us than our time? What's more precious to us than the life that we have to live here? Ask yourself, what will my life have mattered as a part of Hope Church? What will your legacy be? What will Hope Church's legacy be when it's not Hope Church anymore? What will have meant that you were part of this? What will it meant that I was part of this? Do I want this to just be a story I tell my grandkids about one day? Or do I want to be a part of building something that actually blesses and serves the next generation after me? A church that changes lives, that reshapes the community that it lives in, and gives something amazing off to the next generation to carry forward. What story will be told about Hope Church in Greensboro? Think about that for a second. Your life is short. My life is short. What we do in this season, what we build together right now, it can outlast us. It can impact people you and I never meet. It can change the spiritual trajectory of this community. One day, people are going to sit around living rooms and sit around tables and tell the story of what happened here. What do you want that story to be? When I think about that, I think about Nehemiah again. He built these walls. It took him 52 days to do it. Talk about urgency. But the impact of those walls lasted for centuries, long beyond Nehemiah. The walls are still there. You can go to Israel and see them now. People were safe. The city was restored, and God's name was honored. When I think about Hope Church and I think about these next 12 months, I'm not thinking about survival. I'm thinking about legacy. I'm thinking about what it means to serve God in my generation. I don't have forever on this earth. I'm just going to spend it for the glory of God. And then they're going to put me in a box, and I'm going to spend eternity with God. What will it have mattered? What difference will it have made? Will I have been willing to sacrifice? Will I have been willing to invest? Will I have been willing to give for something beyond my own benefit? We step into eternity one day and we don't take any of this stuff with us. Are we willing to pour everything we have into something bigger than ourselves? And then step back and watch God do God things. Our kids will grow up in this church. You and I get to decide what kind of church they grow up in. I want one that's alive. I want one that's moving. I want one that when we gather on Sundays, they see people who are passionate, who raise their hands in worship and love Jesus. I want my kids to grow up in a church where people serve one another, love one another, and reach their community and do awesome things. The actions we take now is going to be what determines that. How we engage in church life, how we love others, how we sacrifice, how we serve. Think about this. The people you invite over the next couple months, the people you invite going into our launch, the people you invite over the next 12 months could have their lives completely transformed by the power of Jesus. This community could feel the presence of God in their life in a way they've never felt it before. Not because we're awesome, but because we were obedient. Because we didn't play it safe. Because we let our story be a part of God's story. That's legacy, church. That's worth the sacrifice. I've been praying in specific terms about what I'd love to see God do over the next 12 months. Can I share that with you? Specifically, what would I love to see God do? And I hope you'll pray for these things with me. Here's the vision, that by the end of July, our renovation is complete. That we have a completed kids space and a church space overall that's beautiful, that's welcoming, that says to people who walk in, you belong here. Number two, that by the time we launch in September, that our entire core team has found a place to serve. That we understand that it matters and that our help is needed. That we have found our place on the wall that we're building. That you believe in it enough, not just to attend on Sunday, but to invest. That we learn to do our ministry areas, whatever those areas are, with excellence, because we know that it impacts people when they come. When we care about excellence in our gatherings and in our ministries, you know what it communicates to people? We care about you. It communicates you matter to us, and we're ready to be here to serve you. It says we love our community. It says we're ready to serve you. The third thing I would love to see, this is what I'm praying for, is that we launch in September, and we launch with 150 people on launch Sunday. That's our total attendance for that day. 150 people would fill this room up pretty good. That's what I'm praying for. We're going to do a big marketing push in the last couple of months before the launch, and we're also going to do a big personal marketing push, which means we have to tell everyone and tell them that we would love them to be part of what God's doing here. By the end of this year, number 4, by the end of this year, I'd love to see us at 100 people in regular Sunday attendance. That's a consistent, growing, thriving church. That's real community, and that's the beginnings of a community-shaping church. Number 5, by this time next year, I'm praying that we've baptized 10 more people who've decided to follow Jesus. 10 people who've encountered God through Hope Church ministry. That's the gospel at work, changing lives, and them deciding to follow Jesus. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all for. I also want to share with you a long-term goal. This is all pretty short-term. This is next 12-month stuff. Because the mission of Jesus, I said it before, the mission of Jesus is not just Greensboro, is it? It's far beyond that. And when we become a healthy, thriving church, we are going not to just sustain ministry, we're going to multiply ministry. That's that people around the world hear the gospel. And so my long-term goal is that we become a disciple-making, church-planting church. Once we're planted and self-sustaining, we then invest in planting new churches. And that leads us to the last thing, the long-term goal. That is that 7 years from today, we plant another church out of this one. You know how you get the gospel to the ends of the earth? By planting churches all the way to the end of the earth. That's how you do it. That was Jesus' strategy. That was the apostles' strategy. Plant churches and spread the gospel and keep planting churches. We want to be growing disciples who then become leaders who we can send out to start new churches. That's generational thinking. That's legacy. By the way, that creates an impact that far outlasts even Hope Church. That means after one day this church changes expressions and who knows what happens, there are Christians and believers and disciples all over because of what God allowed us to do. So that's the vision. That's what we're building toward. We've talked a long time now about believing in this, but this coming year is when it's time to put feet to our words and feet to our prayers. Maybe you're thinking, man, that's so much. How could that happen? Well, I'll tell you this. I'm not in charge of the results. I'm just in charge of the obedience. I'm in charge of doing what I was called to do, right? I can't do God's job. I can only do mine. But I can tell you this, that's not crazy for God. That's not too much for God. God sees those goals, and he might actually laugh at my lack of faith. He can do amazing things if we're willing to be obedient. We're not in charge of the results, but we are in charge of the obedience. I get to decide what I'm praying and what I'm working for. I don't know what God's going to do, but I get to decide what I'm chasing. So here's how we get there. The call to action. Ready? This is the hard part. Here's how you and I actually do our part. It's 4 things, but it uses the acronym PIGS. I don't know why PIGS is the good acronym, because it doesn't really connect in any way. But maybe you'll remember it. We'll call it the oink oink strategy. Okay? PIGS. First is P, pray. That's what Nehemiah did, didn't he? He started with prayer. God responds to the prayer of his people. He responds to broken hearts who pray that he would do something special and amazing. Pray for God to grow our church. Pray that he would grow it even now between here and the launch so that we'll be even in better position for the launch. Pray for that God would send laborers, people who know how to do the ministries areas that we need. And pray for boldness to do your part in inviting and reaching people. Which brings us to the second part. I stands for invite. Invite, invite, invite. Invitations are the heartbeat of a growing church. Growing churches are inviting churches. Tell everyone. Let your family know, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, tell your neighbors, tell the barista at the coffee shop, tell the person you sit next to at work. Say, what do I say? It's really simple. Say this: we're planting a new church. God's doing something new in Greensboro, and I want you to be a part of it. That's not hard. That's a very exciting invitation. Tell them. Get that boldness, get that conviction about what you want to see God do in this community, and invite everyone. Third, give sacrificially. Give. We need to, everything we do costs money. The ministry costs money. Reaching people costs money, and so give. Give sacrificially, right? We got the launch to do. We've got the renovation to complete. And so I'm asking you to pray about what that looks like for you. What does it look like for me to be sacrificial in generosity? What does it look like for it to cost me something? You know, I got to be honest with you. If my kids like to go out in my front yard and pick flowers for my wife, the younger they are, the less discerning they are about what they're picking, right? But what do you say when a kid brings you flowers from the yard? Oh, they're so beautiful. I'll put them in a vase. But I have to tell you, if I brought my wife flowers for Valentine's Day and they were weeds from the front yard, I think she would feel far less enthusiastic about it. Why? Because it would look like I just kind of walked in last second and didn't really have a plan and just took the first thing. There's a story in the Bible where this happens, where David is going to make an offering to God, and he wants to use this specific place for it, and so he goes to buy the land because he wants to build an altar there. And the man knows that David's the king, and so he says, I don't want any money for it, just take it. And David says, I refuse. I have to pay you what it's worth because I do not want to give something to God that costed me nothing. Let me ask you something. Are we expecting God to bless our leftovers? Are we expecting God to bless us doing only what costs us nothing? Or are we willing to sacrifice? Are we willing to give? Are we willing to say, I believe in this enough to put my money where my mouth is? Fourth, serve. It's the last part of PIGS. Serve willingly. And what this means is find a place on the launch team. Find something you can do with excellence. If you're a guest here, I'm not yelling at you about getting on the launch team. I'm just, but you're part of this. Find something you can do with excellence. Find something you can be good at. Find something you enjoy. Work is a lot easier when you enjoy doing it, right? What's the old saying? If you find something you enjoy, then you'll never work a day in your life. Don't do it out of guilt. Do it out of joy. Do it out of a desire to serve others. Do it out of a desire to make the gospel real to people and show people that they're loved and cared for. Every cup of coffee that's given out, every hand that's shaken, every hug that's given, every time you smile at somebody and say, hey, it's so good to have you here. You're loving people. Do it because you care about our community, because you care about Greensboro. The truth is, church, you think, I don't know where to serve. Man, the amount of places you could serve, it's crazy. We need people who are good at details, good at numbers. The kind of people who nobody ever sees and they like it that way. We need those kind of people. We need people who are good at media, good at social media, good at photography. People who love, you're the social type. You like to welcome people at the front door and with a smile. We need people to lead small groups, help with setup and takedown, work with kids, keep track of the parking lot, maintain the facilities. There's so many places. There's renovation work that still needs to be done if you have that kind of skill. The places to serve are endless. The wall is all around us, and there's so many places to jump in. And so whatever it is, find your place on the wall and do it like you're doing it for Jesus, because you are. You are. When you make the sacrifice, it honors God. Do it with excellence. You know, excellence is worship when we do it for God. Show up big. Get there early. Be prepared. Love. Go the extra mile. And so that's it. Pray, invite, give, and serve. Here's what I really want you to hear as we wrap up. This next year is about changing the makeup of our community, where one day hundreds of people and even thousands can say, man, God used Hope Church in my life. Can you imagine that? Thousands of people 10 years from now being able to say, my life was impacted for God's good, for my good and God's glory through Hope Church. When you look back at this time period in your life in the future, you're not going to remember most of the stuff you worried about this year. I'm not going to remember how much my house was worth. I'm not going to remember how much what people thought about me. But I will remember being a part of something that mattered. Being part of a church that moved when it could have been comfortable. I can tell you this, because we're a church plant, it does mean we're in a different season of life than an established church. We can't think like an established church. We have to think like a church plant. We're not going to look the same in 12 months. One way or the other, we will not look the same in 12 months. And I want it to be because we obeyed, because we invited, because we served, because we gave, and that because of that, people in this city find Christ. Families' lives being changed, relationships being restored, the gospel advancing, that being our legacy. Hey, it's worth the sacrifice. Now, what that looks like for each of us is different. If you want to know what that could look like for you and you struggle with that, I'd love to meet with you. It'd be awesome if in the next month I had a dozen meetings for people saying, I would love to know what it looks like for me to be part of this. Where's my spot on the wall? But I hope you leave here today with that holy discontent, the conviction in your heart, and the boldness to make it happen for God's glory. But the question is simple. Will you be part of it? Will you invest this year? Will you build with us? Let's pray.